Welcome to my channel. In today's video I'm going to show you how to transplant your tomatoes and why you should be doing that. Now I'm trying to follow the rules of 315s as it's more catered to Polish weather and Polish temperatures. Mainly on the 15th of March I was sowing them to these trays, as you can see. On 15th of April I should be transplanting them to larger pots. And on the 15th of May, I should be bringing them here to my greenhouse and putting them in the raised beds, or actually planting them outside in the garden as well. However, my tomatoes decided to germinate very quickly and grow very quickly as well. Today, it's only the 1st of April and look at them. They are absolutely gorgeous, large and not stretched out. Very nice stems, quite chunky leaves, and by the looks of things, well, they're very much ready for transplanting right now. How would you know that your plants are ready for transplanting? Well, as an example, this little tomato here. These are the first leaves that pop out from your tomatoes, and when you get the second lot of true leaves, these are called true leaves, that means the tomato is more or less ready to be transplanted to a larger pot. It's just a good indication for us when the time is right. Some of them already got more leaves as well, so it's definitely perfect time to do it right now. And don't wait any longer. I'm going to be transplanting my tomatoes to P9 pots, i.e. they're 9 centimeters by 9 centimeters by 9 centimeters. So they're fairly large, and that's exactly what you want for tomatoes, as they do tend to grow very quickly and they do need that space. Let's make the soil mix that we'll require for transplanting our tomatoes. Now, initially when we were sowing our tomatoes, the soil itself did not require any additional nutrition. Tomatoes for germination don't need that. However, at this stage they will need some minerals and some nutrition, and what I'm actually going to be using is a bit of granulated manure, natural, perfect resource of all the ingredients that these tomatoes may need to grow. So the soil itself, you could have a bit of a richer mix for this. However, I do tend to use the granulated manure. So in most cases, I just use some normal soil for starting seedlings, and I enrich it myself. Now, one very important thing when you're going to be transplanting your tomatoes, or actually any other vegetables, make sure before transplanting you water your vegetables. I've done that in the morning. Now it's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so they had plenty of time to absorb the moisture, and the soil itself, it's still quite moist. You definitely want that to happen. That will be very beneficial for the plants, and they will not go through a shock being transplanted to a new environment. You know, having dry soil, going into potentially dry soil, you have to think about the correct levels of moisture. Now to the soil itself, I will be adding some perlite, and that will make sure I'm going to have consistent amount of moisture within my mix. Now, of course, apart from perlite, you can use a vermiculite. More or less, you know, they work in the same way. So whatever you've got available. And now just give it a good mix. Now, whatever containers you're going to be using, make sure that they do have some holes in them, okay? It's super important to make sure that the excess water has got a way to escape. Now, I'm going to fill them up to about 1/3 of the way, just like so. And now I'm gonna add a bit of granulated manure, not too much, just enough. Okay, now I'm gonna add a bit of soil, not too much, more or less 60%, 70% maybe, full, like that. Now, with some sort of a tool, a spoon, or you can buy these accessories for gardening, pick up the whole cell with your seedlings, okay? Make sure to be very, very careful, okay? Now, as you can see, I do have two that germinated in this cell. So I'm going to split them apart. It's important to be very careful with the stem itself. If you damage the stem, then there's a good chance your tomatoes will, well, die, okay? So the best thing to do is to grab them by the leaves themselves, okay? You're not going to do them much harm that way. And leaves always grow back. Whereas if you damage the stem, well, that's it, really. Tomatoes do have a very cool ability that can actually grow roots from the stem itself. So even if, for example, your tomatoes are a little bit stretched out, don't worry too much. What you can do is to bury them in the soil right up to the top of the first leaves, and that will be absolutely fine. In the first couple of days after transplanting, well, they may not look great, but don't worry. Make sure you do supply plenty of sunshine, plenty of water, but obviously don't over water it. Don't make them swim in the water, okay? The level of moisture needs to be correct, and they will be absolutely fine. Check that out. That's how they should, more or less, look like. Now, don't forget about one more very important thing. At this point, what you want to do is to have a tag with a name of your tomato, and preferably with the dates when you actually did sow it and when you transplanted it. It will give you an indication of where you are and how you're doing. Now I'm just going to carry on with the rest of my tomatoes. I'm not going to transplant all of them, okay? At this point, I just want to make sure I've got probably about 65 seedlings going, and I definitely do have a lot more in both of the trays. So, you know, I need to make sure I've got enough for my greenhouse. So if I do find seedlings that don't look right, I'm just going to skip them. You know, they're going to be binned. You don't have to use every single one of them. You can, of course you can, but there's sometimes no point of doing that. Try to pick up the healthiest, the biggest and the best looking seedlings. And what are the benefits of actually transplanting your tomatoes? Well, there's actually quite a few. First of all, tomatoes love transplanting. It encourages them to grow even more. Okay, it encourages them to create new root system, which is super important, and you know they do grow pretty well. Look at that. Check that root system already in this tomato. Absolutely fantastic. On top of it, as I mentioned before, it's actually good to transplant your tomatoes a little bit deeper, so they will release even more roots from the stem itself, creating much healthier and better looking plants that could yield you better harvest in the summer. I have to say, by far, tomatoes are my favorite, well, fruit, vegetable, whatever you want to call it. I just love tomatoes. My family loves tomatoes. And to be fair, it's an adventure. They always bring joy when you see the first fruit appear, and then when it goes red, absolutely fantastic. And check that out, beautiful tomato seedling. Transplanting your seedlings will make sure they've got enough space, okay? And tomatoes do need a bit of space to grow, as they are quite large plants. On top of it, you can straight away inspect them. If they are ill, if there are any diseases in your seedlings, you can eliminate those straight away. And as I said before, making sure you pick up the strongest seedlings will ensure fantastic harvest later on. It's a perfect way to tackle those stretched tomatoes, but obviously that will only work to a certain degree. If they're really super stretched, thin and weak, there's no point of transplanting them. Most of the cases, they will not give you a great harvest if they survive at all. And in this way, I'm going to be transplanting my tomatoes. So I'm going to probably spend an hour transplanting them, but I'll see you in a second with some more tips. Alright then, so my first tray is sorted. In total I've got 24 seedlings here, and for my personal needs I need 3 more trays like this. It does take a bit of time, but I think it's just nice and relaxing and it brings you joy. So plenty of seedlings still in the tray here. I've got 1 more over there, so plenty to go at. However, now what I want to show you is that on top of these seedlings I do add a bit of perlite, again to make sure I've got that nice amount of moisture around my seedlings. And now, most importantly, we need to make sure our seedlings got some water. And there you have it. Very simple but very important process to follow to make sure you will have fantastic tomatoes in your garden. Now I'm gonna post some photos for you on my Instagram account. I've got a link for you down below in the description of this video, and I'm gonna try to do a few posts for you to see how these will look after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 7 days, so you'll know exactly what to expect. So yeah, go and follow me on Instagram so you won't miss any of that. However, for today, that's it really. If you want to check, I do have a fantastic playlist over here, plenty of gardening tips and 1 playlist with a bit of cooking. Hey, for today that's all. I hope you're gonna have a fantastic week. Take care.